Hi, I'm Dr. Karen Treisman, clinical psychologist, trainer, and author. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about a difficult topic, which is that of loss and grief and bereavement. And I'm really mindful whilst I'm doing this that there will be many people at different stages of thinking about loss and grief. And some people are in a place at the moment where they feel that they are having lots of rediscoveries, reconnections, gains, and that this won't really resonate for them. And there's other people who are in the very painful experience of having experienced actual bereavement and grief, and many people who will be lots of shades in between. So I'm just going to talk to some of the thoughts and reflections I've been having over the past couple of weeks, and hope that it is useful or interesting to some people and resonates for some. And I guess the reason I've really been thinking a lot about loss and grief is because I think at the moment, for many of us, there's not only some individual loss and grief, but there is also collective, community grief and bereavement. And some of that is actual loss and bereavement, and some of that might be more symbolic, metaphorical loss and bereavement and grief. So I guess thinking about why I wanted to say this is that people often talk about how it can be helpful to put words to experiences, to sensations. And I think for some people, there's this real feeling of loss and grief. And that can leave us feeling quite heavy, quite drained, quite confused, disorientated, emotionally exhausted, and all of those other shades in between. And I think there's also that fear of loss or of grief or of change or of transition, and that anticipatory grief, which I think is another huge area. And what we're having at the moment, which is an unfamiliar new experience with respect to COVID, is about this collective grief. And so some of what we're feeling might be individual, but some of the other bits might be what we're picking up from people around us, from the air in the community, from social media, that we're also experiencing this shared collective grief that we are being soaked and marinated and absorbing in. And that can feel quite difficult at points as well. For other people, that can be a source of enrichment, that we're having some common experiences, albeit there are a lot of individual differences within that. And the thing with grief and loss is it will impact people differently at different times, and it will spill and leak out and filter the way we see things differently. There's no right or wrong way. For other people, this current feeling of loss and grief will be catapulting them back to other losses and griefs. They might be falling down a memory time hole, and that will differ depending on people's past experiences of loss and grief and other people's responses to that, and lots of different factors. But I guess I just wanted to speak to some of what those experiences of loss and grief might be. And this is not an exhaustive list, these are just ones coming into my mind, and I'm sure each person will have different ones that feel more weighty or significant for them, and that might change at different times. So as we know, many people have experienced actual bereavement, the loss of someone they loved, the loss of someone who they admired, respected, looked up to, the loss of someone who was an integral part of their lives. And for those people who are going through the horrific, painful experience of bereavement, and we know that can also come from mixed feelings for many people. And what can be adding to that is that for many people, they also have had the loss of not being able to be with that person in their last moments, not being able to hold their hand, not being able to do the rituals, that often will go after someone has died, whether that be a funeral, a cremation, a family gathering, and so many different types of culturally sensitive ways of processing someone's loss. For other people, there will be other forms of loss, symbolic, metaphorical. That might be the loss of one's job, the loss of one's income, the loss of someone's financial security, the loss of someone's role. And that can be in so many ways, from jobs to being the person who visited a particular family member, to being someone who was going out to work, who's now at home with the children. So many different types of loss. That loss of daily routines, of rituals, the loss of what some people would refer to as control or freedom. And that can be exhausting as well, that moral exhaustion. Should I pop to the shops? Should I not? Should I go round and drop something off for someone? Should I not? Those things that usually people didn't even think about. It might be for some people the loss of connection, the loss of hugs and kisses, the loss of socialising. For other people, or the same people, it might be the loss of some of those coping tools and strategies and services that people so often rely on. That shop that you volunteer in that gives you meaning. That gym that you go to really release some stress. That therapist who you go to on a weekly basis. So many different things, that park that you sit in. So many different things that people often might rely on or might anchor onto, might be feeling some of that loss around that. Some people might be feeling a loss of safety, particularly those who are in a place of feeling under fear and under threat and in survival. And people will be feeling that in very different ways depending on their situation, their circumstances. Other people might be feeling the loss of opportunities, of things that they've worked so hard for, that they've been longing for, looking forward to, whether it is that holiday, that wedding, that new job that they were going to start to, a child who was coming home from university, all of those different aspects. Sometimes it would just be that loss of that sense of normality, that loss of that sense of not having to think. For other people, they'll be feeling a loss of hope. There's so many different ways and bits within that. And as I said, and I've said repeatedly, different people will be experiencing that differently to different extents. And in some ways, this collective grief might give some people a real sense of connection, unity, belonging, togetherness, that they don't feel alone. For other people, they will not be in that place and will be instead feeling quite suffocated by what's going on, and that the people they often go to for that support aren't there, and all of the different shades in between. So I hope that's helpful to just put a few words to some of the feelings and some of the experiences that many people might be going through around loss.